The NFL Draft is a fun time for both players and fans, as over the course of a 3-day weekend in late April, over 250 young men get to live out their dreams and become an NFL player. It's hugs and kisses for everyone for that weekend, but after that, it is time to get to work. And in a world that wants results now more than ever before, fans want to see their first-round picks not only play well, but play great early on and prove they were well worth the first-round pick their favorite franchise invested in them. And in today's video, we're going to discuss 4 NFL teams already regretting their 2023 first round pick. And to be clear, this doesn't mean these guys are already busts and they have no hope. And in fact, I hope they turn it around and go on to have great NFL careers. And a lot of the time, a player's situation can determine how their career goes. Some may be surprising, and there is a lot to dive into in today's video. And before we get started, I wanted to talk to you guys about an experience I had the last time I went to an NFL game. I didn't have tickets, there were no good ticket deals, and I didn't know what the seats were going to look like when I sat down. And that's not something you should have to worry about when you go to your next big event. And with GameTime, you don't have to worry about that. And with killer last minute deals, views from your seat, all in prices, meaning you don't have to worry about this fee and that fee and everything in between, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And what I love about GameTime is how easy it is to use the app. They have views from every seat in the house, and one game I am personally looking at attending coming up is the Bengals and Ravens next month on Thursday night. GameTime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind. You can see your seat before you get there, so you know exactly what to expect. They give you all-in pricing, so there's no hidden fees, and buying tickets is just 2 taps. It's as simple as it gets. So go download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code ANALYSIS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, and again, create an account, use code ANALYSIS, ANALYSIS, for $20 off. Download GameTime today, last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And we are starting today's video with Chargers receiver Quentin Johnston. Quentin was the 21st overall pick and was the second receiver taken behind Seattle's Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Quentin is in today's video for several reasons. The first is, when you look at a receiver being drafted to the NFL, the first thing you're going to do is look at their quarterback and generate thoughts on how this quarterback and receiver duo is going to look in the future. It's natural, everyone does it. And I was extremely excited for both Quentin and Justin Herbert just 6 months ago, thinking about the long-term impact these guys could have, as Keenan Allen is 31 years old and will hang the cleats up in the next few years, and I thought Justin had his guy for the next several years in Quentin. And he very well could, but Chargers fans are extremely frustrated with him at the moment, because through 5 games, he has just 13 targets and has just 6 receptions for 44 yards. And what's particularly frustrating for Chargers fans is having Quentin be the second receiver drafted and seeing the ensuing 2 picks in Baltimore's Zay Flowers and Minnesota's Jordan Addison both be more productive than Quentin through the first month and a half of the year. And to kind of add on here, there's a lot of rookie receivers that are more productive than QJ so far, but the 2 that were drafted immediately after him sting specifically. His teammate Mike Williams tore his ACL back in week 3, and when that happened, I thought Quentin would effectively step into his role, or at least get close to his target share and have his first not only touchdown, but string together multiple 50 or 60 yard games, which by the way isn't anything unrealistic either, and I wasn't expecting Quentin to have multiple 100 yard games, just 3 or 4 catch games along with 50 or 55 yards. But in the 2 games since then, Quentin has a grand total of 5 targets while hauling in a singular reception for just 18 yards. What's concerning is in the Dallas game, a game the Chargers would go on to lose by 3 points in a heartbreaking, very Chargers loss, Justin Herbert had more receptions than Quentin with 1-0. There's a very real chance Zay Flowers has 1,000 yards as a rookie, and through 6 games, he has 367 yards and a touchdown. And sure, Zay's rookie season won't be confused with Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase's from a few years ago, but having that production, especially with Mike Williams done for the year, would help in a big way. Now, I'm not faulting the Chargers for not drafting Puka Nacua in the later rounds either, as he was a 5th round pick, so in theory, we could say every team wishes they had him, as hindsight is always 20/20, but for Quentin, he's in a great situation, and he's in a situation receivers dream about. DJ Moore would do anything to have Justin Herbert throw him the ball. He'd do anything to have Kellen Moore be his offensive coordinator instead of Luke Getsy. things can change for Quentin as the jury isn't already out, but for the Chargers, a team who very much has Super Bowl aspirations, to have 6 catches for 44 yards through 5 games for your first round pick, despite being in one of the best situations a receiver can have, is concerning to say the least. From LA to the nation's capital, we go to discuss corner Emmanuel Forbes. There's a few angles to go about this, and we will hit all of those angles, but the first part of this is Emmanuel should have never been the 16th overall pick. He shouldn't have been the second corner drafted, and especially when Christian Gonzalez fell right into Washington's lap. There's times as a franchise where Washington does things, and I think they're going to turn the corner, and I think they are starting to figure it out, and then they make decisions like this that simply do not make sense. And 6 weeks in, Emmanuel has been benched in favor of former undrafted player Danny Johnson. I didn't like the Forbes pick at the time, not just because there were better players available, like Christian Gonzalez, Joey Porter Jr., and Deonte Banks, but Forbes' weight is a problem, especially in this division. The NFC East is not the AFC East, where they have to have speed to try and stop lighter guys like Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill. Yes, they have players like Devonta Smith, who is light himself, but CeeDee Lamb is around 200 pounds, and A.J. Brown is a big boy, and he's a grown man. And A.J. weighs around 50 pounds more than Forbes, and you cannot give up that type of size and expect to compete. The Eagles aren't going to say to Ron Rivera pregame, "Hey man, we know Emmanuel isn't the biggest guy, so we won't throw at him, especially if you're dumb enough to put him in a one-on-one in the fourth quarter against our big play threat in A.J. Brown. Surely we won't throw it to him." And that's another problem in itself, is setting Emmanuel up to fail. But in the games Forbes has played so far, he has been targeted 27 times and allowed 20 receptions for 401 yards and 2 touchdowns with a passer rating of 125.2. And for reference of how bad a 125.2 passer rating is when targeted, Aaron Rodgers threw 48 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions in 2020 and won the MVP, and his passer rating was 121.5. So when Forbes has been targeted in 2023, he's allowing a higher passer rating than MVP winning quarterbacks. And the Eagles game in particular was awful, as he was credited for allowing 9 receptions for 197 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game alone. I know that's not a good game, obviously, but it's also on coaching to put him in this position. There is no reason to ever have Forbes alone with A.J. Brown with the game effectively on the line. You know who could be in that position though? Joey Porter Jr. or Christian Gonzalez. And this is honestly where I feel a little bad for Emmanuel, is because he was way overdrafted, and while this situation won't look as bad, but it reminds me a lot of the Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson pick. Unless Gonzalez becomes a Defensive Player of the Year award winner, the pick won't ever get that much buzz in terms of how bad it was, but the Commanders are regretting this pick already, and they've already shown that 6 weeks in. Next up is Tyree Wilson of the Raiders, and this is a very less than ideal situation for Tyree to be in just 6 weeks into his career for several reasons. Like Quentin with the Chargers, Tyree is in a great situation to thrive in immediately. Raiders fans generally don't have a lot to be excited about, but one player they do have a lot to be excited about, and one player they absolutely love, and rightfully so by the way, is Max Crosby. Max is an absolute freak and is a game changer, and through 6 weeks he is leading the NFL in pressures with 38. And having this type of player should, in theory, make everyone else's job along the defensive line easier because, let's face it, Tyree Wilson, or anybody for that matter, will never be the focus of the opposing team's offensive game plan every single week. Andy Reid isn't heading into Raiders week and saying, how do we stop Tyree Wilson? How do we scheme plays away from him? If Tyree had a big impact like we are seeing other rookies have, it would eventually be, how do we scheme away from both Tyree and Max? But the reality is that's not a question anybody is asking at the moment. And to give you an idea of how bad Tyree has been so far in 2023, he has a pass rush win rate of just 2.1% through 6 games, meaning if a quarterback were to throw 50 passes in a game, Tyree would impact the passing play 1 time. Fellow 2023 draftee Jalen Carter, on the other hand, has a pass rush win rate of 20.9%, which is nearly 10 times the win rate Tyree has through the first 6 weeks. Carter has 23 pressures to Tyree's 4, and this is with Jalen missing a game. I don't want to get into discussion of should the Raiders have taken Carter over Tyree, because there were a lot of off-the-field concerns with Jalen, and I understand the Raiders not wanting to go down that route, especially with everything that has happened with their organization over the past few years, and there was no denying Carter was a better prospect than Tyree was in the draft process, at least from his position standpoint. But it is not unreasonable for the Raiders to expect more than a measly 4 pressures from Tyree through 6 games. I mean, that is abysmal. This will change, but at the moment, Seahawks corner Devin Witherspoon has more pressures and sacks than Tyree currently does. If there is anything positive to say about Tyree, or through a glass half full lens, it's that one game can change everything. If he has a game where he has 4 or 5 pressures, which by the way would double his current season total, then that would build confidence and give him something to build on moving forward. Tyree has a great attitude, and I loved his physical traits coming out of Texas Tech, and the one thing about guys in the trenches is it does take them longer to develop than other positions, but no matter how you slice it, 4 pressures in 6 games is brutal. From Vegas to Charlotte, we go to discuss Bryce Young of the Panthers, and this is unlike the others because Bryce is a draft bust. And I am completely kidding when I say that, but I am serious that the Panthers are regretting this pick, and it doesn't have anything to do with Bryce Young himself. This isn't a, oh, they should have taken CJ Stroud, or oh, they should have taken Anthony Richardson, or any of that. The situation eerily reminds me of what the Bears did to go up and get Justin Fields in 2021. They needed a quarterback of the future, or a guy who they perceived to be the quarterback of the future, so they traded the assets they had, which at the time was next year's first, which ended up being the number 7 overall pick. And for Carolina, they not only gave up their 2024 first-round pick, but they also gave up DJ Moore, who has shown at times throughout his career that he can be a 1,300 or 1,400-yard receiver if his quarterbacks weren't bad. And having Caleb Williams would help tremendously next year, obviously, but even if they had their first-round pick in 2024 and it was a top 5 pick, the Panthers could easily acquire another first-round pick and probably a second-round pick out of it, and that was if it wasn't the number 1 overall selection. So at this point, they're out both a 2024 first and a perennial 1,000-yard receiver, and this is why, in a lot of ways, they are regretting the Bryce Young pick, because they gave up everything they had to go get him, only to surround him with what is indisputably one of the worst supporting casts in all of football. There's a real chance a 33-year-old Adam Thielen goes for 1,200 yards and 9 or 10 touchdowns in 2023, and it's not because Adam is destroying everybody in his path, and he turned the clock back to 2018 when he had 8 straight 100-yard games. It's because nobody else on this team has more than 20 receptions through 6 weeks, while Adam has 49. No other Panther has 200 receiving yards or 20 receptions through 6 games, and the bad news for Carolina is it's not magically going to get better. They're in a position now where they almost have to trade pieces like Brian Burns and Jeremy Chin so they can try and salvage Bryce's career. And by the way, I like Bryce a lot, and I think there's been moments in the first 6 weeks where Bryce has made plays that show genuine promise. Obviously, the win-loss record is going to be bad, and it was always going to be bad for the 2023 Carolina Panthers. But setting any quarterback up with this supporting cast is a recipe for a draft bust. And in terms of being behind the 8 ball, well, Bryce isn't behind the 8 ball. He's behind about 4 or 5 8 balls. I will say if the Panthers do trade Brian Burns and get a first-round pick for him, and they wind up with Emeka Egbuka or Malik Neighbors or somebody like that in the first round, I would start to like this situation. But missing out on Caleb Williams or even the possibility of doing what the Bears just did to the Panthers while extending Brian Burns and have him potentially be the second player in this franchise's history with 75 plus sacks along with the great Julius Peppers is a drastic difference from where they are now. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 25% of people watching are subscribed, and it helps tremendously. We are closing in on 100,000 subscribers, and I truly cannot thank you guys enough for the support. Thank you to GameTime for sponsoring today's video, and until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.